I never thought my daughter's birthday party would be the moment my carefully constructed life fell apart. 13 candles, pizza boxes strewn across the counter, and the sound of teenage girls giggling from the den. That's when I heard it, Lila's voice carrying through our home like a wrecking ball. "He's not even my real dad," she said, laughing as though sharing a harmless joke. "My mom told me when I was little. He doesn't know." I froze in the kitchen doorway, a stack of paper plates clutched against my chest. Across the room, Leo stood perfectly still, his face draining of color as our eyes met. In that moment, I felt the foundation of our 15-year marriage crack beneath my feet. That was 3 weeks ago. My name is Anna Warren. I'm 41. And the life I built is disintegrating because of a secret I've kept for 14 years. The morning after the party, I woke to an empty bed. Leo had spent the night in the guest room, something we'd silently agreed upon when he finally came back inside after disappearing for 2 hours. We'd moved around each other like ghosts, cleaning up the party debris without speaking. What could I possibly say? I found him in the kitchen, staring into a cup of black coffee. His eyes were rimmed red, his usually clean-shaven face showing stubble. The silence between us felt physical, like something I could touch if I reached out. "Leo," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, and I hardly recognized the man I'd shared my life with. The warmth that usually softened his gaze was gone, replaced by something hollow. "Was she telling the truth?" he asked. No preamble, no anger, just a simple question that required me to either continue the lie or destroy everything. "It's complicated," I said, immediately hating myself for the cliché. Leo's laugh was bitter, alien. 14 years of marriage, and that's what you give me? It's complicated. The girls were just being dramatic. You know how teenagers are. I tried. Stop. His voice was quiet but firm. I don't want excuses or deflections. I want the truth, Anna. Is Lila my biological daughter or not? The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, a neighbor started their lawnmower. Normal Sunday morning sounds that suddenly felt surreal against the disintegration of my marriage. "No," I finally whispered. "She's not." Leo closed his eyes, his fingers tightening around his coffee mug until his knuckles went white. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you lie to me for 14 years? Why would you tell our daughter and not me?" The truth is, I never planned to tell Lila either. It had slipped out one night when she was 7, during a stupid argument about bedtime. She'd screamed that I was the worst mom ever, and somehow, in my frustration, I'd blurted out that she should be grateful I'd chosen to keep her when her real father hadn't wanted her. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a catastrophic mistake. I'd spent the next hour backpedaling, making her promise never to repeat it, especially not to Leo. She'd kept that promise for 7 years, until now. "I was trying to protect you," I said, knowing how inadequate the words were. "I thought if you knew." "What? That I'd leave? That I wouldn't love her?" His voice cracked. "What kind of man do you think I am, Anna?" That was the problem. Leo was a good man, better than I deserved. The kind who shows up, who stays, who loves without condition. The kind I'd been terrified of losing when I discovered I was pregnant just 4 months into our relationship. I was scared, I admitted. We were still so new, and I knew if I told you the baby wasn't yours. But you let me believe she was. For 14 years, you let me believe I was her father. He pushed back from the table, the chair leg scraping harshly against the tile floor. "Who is he? Do I know him?" I shook my head. "It doesn't matter. He's not in the picture. He never wanted to be." "It matters to me." Leo slammed his palm against the table, making me flinch. He never raised his voice, never showed anger like this. "I have a right to know who fathered the child I've raised as my own." His words hit like a physical blow. Had I really convinced myself all these years that my lie was protecting everyone? Or had I just been protecting myself from the consequences of my actions? "His name is Gabriel," I said quietly. "We dated briefly before you and I met. When I found out I was pregnant, He made it clear he wanted nothing to do with it, with her. Leo stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. And you never thought I deserved to know this? That Lila deserved to know? I was going to tell you at the beginning, I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. But then you were so happy about the pregnancy, and time kept passing, and it just seemed easier to lie, he finished for me, to build our entire relationship on a foundation of lies. He stood up abruptly. I need some air. I can't be in this house right now. Panic seized me. Leo, please, we can talk about this. We can work through it. Work through it? He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. This isn't a disagreement about finances, or whose turn it is to do the dishes, Anna. You've been lying to me every day for 14 years, about something fundamental to our family. I watched him grab his keys from the hook by the door, helpless to stop what was happening. What about Lila? I asked. She'll be up soon. Tell her whatever you want, he said, his hand on the doorknob. You're good at that. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than if he'd slammed it. Lila came downstairs an hour later, sleepy-eyed and oblivious to the earthquake that had just rocked our family. I'd managed to pull myself together enough to make pancakes, a pathetic attempt at normalcy. Where's Dad? She asked, sliding onto a bar stool. I placed a plate in front of her, grateful that my hands weren't visibly shaking. He had to run some errands. She nodded, accepting this without question. Why wouldn't she? Leo was reliable, predictable, the steady presence in our family who never disappeared without explanation, until today. I studied her as she ate, searching for traces of Gabriel in her features. The high cheekbones, maybe. The slightly almond shape of her eyes. Details I'd trained myself not to see over the years, to blur out of focus whenever I looked at her. Mom? You're being weird, Lila said, breaking into my thoughts. I forced a smile. Just tired. It was a late night. Thanks for the party, she said, suddenly shy. It was really fun. The innocence in her voice made my chest ache. She had no idea what she'd done, what she'd set in motion with her careless words. Or did she? Had some part of her wanted this secret exposed? Lila, I began carefully. What you said last night to your friends. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. What did I say? About Dad. About him not being your real father. Her face flushed, eyes widening. You heard that. So did Leo, I said quietly. Lila put down her fork, her appetite apparently gone. I didn't mean it, Mom. We were just talking about parents and stuff. And Jess was complaining about her stepdad. And I don't know, it just came out. But why would you say that? Why would you tell your friends something so private? I tried to keep the accusation out of my voice, but it crept in anyway. Because it's true, she shot back, suddenly defensive. You told me. You said my real dad didn't want me, and Leo never knew. The words hit me like a slap. Hearing them from my daughter's mouth made the magnitude of my deception impossible to ignore. I was wrong to tell you that, I admitted, sinking onto the stool beside her, especially the way I did. I was angry and frustrated, and I said something I shouldn't have. But it's still true, right? Her eyes searched mine, looking for confirmation or denial. I couldn't tell which. I nodded slowly. Yes, biologically, Leo isn't your father. But Lila, he's been your dad in every way that matters since the day you were born. He loves you more than anything. Then why did he leave? Her lower lip trembled. If he loves me so much, why isn't he here? The question pierced straight through me. How could I explain that it wasn't her Leo was running from, but me? That it wasn't about love, but trust. He's hurt and confused, I said carefully. He just found out something huge that changes how he sees our family. He needs time to process that. Because I told my friends? Her voice was small now. No, honey, I reached for her hand. Because I never told him the truth. This isn't your fault. It's mine. Lila pulled away from me, sliding off the stool. Is he coming back? I wanted to promise her that of course he would, that everything would be fine. But I'd done enough lying. I don't know, I admitted. I hope so. Leo didn't come home that night, or the next. He texted to say he was staying with his brother Keith, that he needed time to think. I tried calling, but my calls went straight to voicemail. Lila grew increasingly anxious, picking at her food and checking her phone constantly, waiting for some word from the only father she'd ever known. On the third day, I finally broke down and called Keith. "Is he there?" I asked when he answered, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. "You know he is," Keith replied, his tone neutral but cool. The Warren brothers had always been close. I wasn't surprised he'd taken Leo's side. "How is he?" Keith sighed. "How do you think, Anna? He's devastated. His entire world just got turned upside down. I need to talk to him, Keith. We need to figure this out for Lila's sake, if nothing else. He's not ready. It's been 3 days. Yeah, well, you had 14 years to come clean, so maybe cut him some slack on the timeline." I winced at the barb, but couldn't argue with it. "Just tell him Lila's asking for him. Tell him she's scared." "I'll tell him," Keith said after a pause. "But Anna, don't expect this to blow over. I've never seen him like this." After we hung up, I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, unable to face going back inside where Lila was waiting for news. How had I convinced myself all these years that my secret was protecting my family, that Leo was better off not knowing? Had it really been about him at all, or just about my own fear of consequences? The truth was, I'd been selfish. I'd trapped Leo in a lie because I was afraid of losing him, because I needed him to raise the child that Gabriel had rejected, because I couldn't face the reality of single motherhood or the judgment that would come with it. And now I might lose everything anyway. When Leo finally came home 5 days after the party, it wasn't the reunion I'd hoped for. He arrived mid-afternoon while Lila was at a friend's house, his face haggard but determined. "We need to talk," he said, standing awkwardly in our foyer like a visitor, "about what happens next." My heart sank at his phrasing. "Let's sit down," I suggested, leading him to the living room, the formal one we rarely used, which somehow seemed appropriate for this conversation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Leo began once we were seated across from each other, "about what this means for us, for our family." "Leo, I know what I did was wrong," I said, the words rushing out. "Keeping this from you was the biggest mistake of my life. But we can work through this. We can get counseling. We can—" "Stop." His voice was gentle but firm. "I didn't come here to discuss reconciliation, Anna. I came to talk about Lila." The finality in his tone made my breath catch. "What about her?" "I want you to know that nothing changes how I feel about her," he said, looking me directly in the eyes for the first time since he'd discovered the truth. "She's my daughter, maybe not biologically, but in every way that matters." Relief washed through me, quickly followed by confusion. "Then why haven't you called her? Why haven't you come home?" "Because I can't be with you anymore," he said simply. "I can forgive a lot of things, Anna, but the scale of this deception, the years of lies, I can't get past it. But I won't abandon Lila." "So what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm saying I want a divorce, but I also want shared custody. I want to continue being Lila's father." The word divorce hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I'd known it was coming from the moment Lila's secret slipped out, but hearing Leo say it made it real in a way nothing else had. "Does she even know I'm not her biological father?" Leo asked suddenly. "Or was that just something you told her in private?" The question caught me off guard. "She knows," I admitted. "I told her when she was 7, during an argument. It just came out." Leo's face hardened. "So she's known for 7 years? And neither of you ever thought I deserved to know?" "I made her promise not to tell you," I said quickly. "I convinced her it would hurt you, that it was better if you didn't know. She was just a child, Leo. Don't blame her for this." "I don't," he said quietly. "But it explains a lot. The way she started pulling away from me around that age. The times I'd catch her looking at me strangely. She's been carrying this secret all these years because you put that burden on her." The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. I'd never considered how my secret had affected Lila, how it might have strained her relationship with the man who raised her. In my desperation to protect my lie, I'd hurt the two people I loved most. What do we tell her, I asked. About us? The truth, Leo said firmly. All of it this time. She deserves at least that much. Telling Lila was as painful as I'd imagined. Leo came back later that evening, and we sat her down together in the living room. I watched her face crumple as Leo explained that he would be moving out, that we were separating. But why? She demanded, looking between us with tear-filled eyes. Is it because of what I said? Because I can take it back. I'll tell everyone I made it up. No, sweetheart, Leo said, reaching for her hand. This isn't because of what you said. It's about trust between your mom and me. But I need you to know something. You are my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. But I'm not, she said, her voice breaking. Mom told me. Years ago. Leo moved to sit beside her on the couch, putting his arm around her shoulders. Biology doesn't make a family, Lila. Love does. I was there when you were born. I taught you to ride a bike. I sat through every one of your terrible dance recitals. That earned a watery laugh from Lila. They were pretty bad. Excruciating, he agreed, kissing the top of her head. But I wouldn't have missed them for the world, because you're my daughter, and that will never change. I watched them from across the room, my heart breaking and healing simultaneously. Leo was a better person than I had ever been, capable of separating his feelings for me from his love for Lila, capable of forgiveness, even if he couldn't forget. So you're still my dad? Lila asked in a small voice. Always, Leo promised. We'll figure out the details, but I'll always be your dad. Lila turned to me then, her eyes hard in a way that made her look suddenly older. What about my real father? My biological one? Who is he? I hesitated, looking at Leo. We hadn't discussed this part. His name is Gabriel Taylor, I said finally. We dated briefly before I met Leo. Does he know about me? Another question I'd hoped to avoid. Yes, I admitted. I told him when I found out I was pregnant. And he didn't want me. It wasn't a question. She'd pieced that together years ago from the fragments I'd let slip during that fateful argument. He wasn't ready to be a father, I said carefully. He was 24, just starting his career. He didn't want the responsibility. So he just, what? Walked away? I nodded, unable to find words that would soften this blow. But Leo stayed, she said, looking up at the man beside her. Even though I wasn't his, he stayed. I stayed because I loved you, Leo said simply. From the moment I saw you, you were mine. Lila's eyes filled with fresh tears. Then why are you leaving now? Leo looked at me over Lila's head. His eyes sad but resolute. Sometimes adults make mistakes that can't be fixed, but nothing about this changes how I feel about you. We'll work out a schedule. You'll spend time at my place, time here with your mom. It'll be an adjustment, but we'll get through it. I don't want things to change, Lila whispered. I crossed the room then, kneeling in front of my daughter. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. This is my fault, not yours. I kept a secret I shouldn't have kept, and now we're all paying for it. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to have aged years in a single evening. Why did you lie to both of us? It was the question I'd been dreading, the one I still didn't have a good answer for. I was scared, I said finally. Scared of raising you alone. Scared of losing Leo. Scared of what would happen if the truth came out. So I convinced myself that the lie was better for everyone. Better for you, you mean, she said, with a teenager's brutal honesty. I couldn't argue with that. Yes, I admitted. It was selfish. And I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. Leo moved out the following weekend, taking only what he needed for a small apartment near his office. Lila spent her first weekend with him, coming home Sunday night with red-rimmed eyes but a slightly lighter demeanor than she'd had all week. They'd gone furniture shopping, she told me. Picked out a bed and desk for her room at his place. He got me a new basketball hoop for his driveway, she said, the first hint of excitement in her voice since everything had fallen apart. And we're going to paint my room blue, the color I wanted for my room here, remember? I nodded, forcing a smile. That sounds nice, honey. She hesitated in the doorway to the kitchen. He doesn't hate you, you know. He's just really hurt. The insight surprised me, coming from my 14-year-old. Did he say that? Not exactly, but I can tell, she shrugged. He still has your wedding picture on his nightstand. Hope flickered briefly in my chest before I tamped it down. I couldn't allow myself that luxury, not yet. Maybe not ever. I'd done enough damage with my selfishness. I'm glad you had a good weekend, I said instead. And I'm glad you and Leo are okay. Dad, she corrected firmly. He's still my dad. In the months that followed, we settled into a new normal. Lila split her time between our house and Leo's apartment. Leo and I communicated primarily about logistics, our conversations polite but distant. The divorce proceedings moved forward, mediated rather than contested. Leo was generous in the settlement, caring more about maintaining stability for Lila than punishing me financially. I waited for the anger to fade, for Leo to soften toward me, but it didn't happen. He was civil, even kind sometimes, but the wall between us remained firmly in place. I couldn't blame him. What I'd done had violated the foundation of trust our relationship was built on. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, Lila came home from school with an unexpected request. I want to find him, she announced over dinner. Gabriel, my biological father. I set down my fork, caught off guard. Why? She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance but not quite achieving it. I'm curious. Don't you think that's normal, to want to know where you come from? Of course it's normal, I said carefully. But Lila, he made it very clear he didn't want to be involved in your life. That was 14 years ago, she pointed out. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he regrets it. The hope in her voice made my heart ache. Honey, I don't want you to get hurt. I already am hurt, she said bluntly. Finding out my whole life was based on a lie kind of took care of that. I flinched at her words, but couldn't argue with them. Have you talked to Leo about this? Yes. He says it's up to me, that he'll support whatever I decide, and that knowing Gabriel won't change anything between us. I'll need to think about this, I hedged. It's complicated. Everything's complicated with you, Mom, she said, with sudden sharpness. But I'm not asking for your permission. I'm 14, not 4. I just thought you should know I'm going to look for him. And how exactly do you plan to do that, I asked, genuinely curious. I don't know yet. Social media, maybe? The internet makes it pretty easy to find people these days. She pushed her plate away, standing up from the table. I just thought you might want to help, since you actually know who he is and all. She left the kitchen before I could respond, leaving me with a sinking feeling in my stomach. She was right. With enough determination, she could probably find Gabriel on her own. Wouldn't it be better if I helped her, if I controlled the narrative to some degree? I called Leo that night after Lila had gone to bed. She wants to find Gabriel, I said, when he answered, skipping any greeting. I know, he replied. She told me last weekend. And you think it's a good idea? After how he rejected her? Leo was quiet for a moment. I think it's a natural curiosity. And I think denying her the chance to satisfy it would just be another form of lying. His words stung, but he wasn't wrong. What if he hurts her? What if he wants nothing to do with her? Then she'll be hurt, Leo said simply. But she'll know the truth, and she'll have both of us to help her through it. After we hung up, I sat in the dark of my kitchen, confronting the reality of what was about to happen. Gabriel Taylor. He'd be 38 now, the last I'd heard. He was working for a tech firm in Seattle, married with 2 kids. I'd found his wedding announcement online years ago, during a moment of weakness. Had seen pictures of his perfect wife, his perfect life. No sign of the daughter he'd abandoned before she was even born. I tried to imagine how he'd react to Lila showing up in his life. Would he be kind, dismissive? Would he even acknowledge her? And what would his wife think of this teenage reminder of his past? I found Gabriel's email address with embarrassing ease. One search on LinkedIn, and there he was. His profile picture showed a man with Lila's high cheekbones and almond-shaped eyes, smiling confidently at the camera. successful, polished. A far cry from the selfish 20-something who'd walked away from his responsibilities 14 years ago. I drafted and deleted a dozen emails before settling on something simple. Gabriel. I don't know if you remember me. We dated briefly 15 years ago in Chicago. I'm writing because our daughter Lila is 14 now and wants to meet you. I understand if this comes as a shock, or if you'd prefer not to be involved. But she deserves the chance to know where she comes from, and I'm hoping you might be open to at least speaking with her. Anna Warren. I hit send before I could change my mind, then sat staring at my computer screen, half expecting an immediate response. None came. I closed my laptop, trying to tamp down the anxiety rising in my chest. What if he ignored me? What if he denied everything? What if he wanted to be part of Lila's life now, after all these years? Gabriel replied to my email the next morning. His response so immediate it was clear he'd been thinking about it all night. Anna, I remember you. I won't pretend this email didn't come as a shock. I had no idea you kept the baby, our daughter. I've thought about that time in my life often over the years, and I've regretted the way I handled things. I was young and selfish, and I'm sorry for that. I would very much like to meet Lila, if she's open to it. My wife knows about this part of my past, so there won't be any awkward surprises there. We have 2 sons, 8 and 6, who I'm sure would be thrilled to learn they have an older sister. I live in Seattle now, but I'm actually scheduled to be in Chicago for a conference next month. Perhaps we could arrange something then. Gabriel. I read the email 3 times, trying to reconcile this mature, reflective voice with the callous young man who'd told me he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility before blocking my number. People change, I reminded myself. 14 years is a long time. I forwarded the email to Leo, then called Lila into the kitchen. I have something to tell you, I said, as she slid into a chair across from me. I contacted Gabriel, your biological father. Her eyes widened. You did? What did he say? He responded. I turned my laptop toward her. You can read it yourself. I watched her face as she read, seeing the emotions play across her features. Surprise, hope, uncertainty. He wants to meet me, she said finally, looking up. And he has kids. I have half-brothers. Apparently so, I said carefully. How do you feel about that? She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance but not quite hitting it. It's weird, but kind of cool, I guess. Leo surprised us all by offering to accompany Lila to meet Gabriel, saying that while their marriage couldn't be saved, they could still be partners in supporting their daughter. The meeting was awkward at first, Gabriel nervously explaining his past mistakes, while his wife Emily warmly welcomed Lila as family. When Gabriel's young sons excitedly bombarded their new big sister with questions, the tension finally broke, and I watched as Lila's face lit up with a cautious happiness I hadn't seen in months. Over the following year, our unconventional family expanded in ways I never could have imagined. Lila began spending 1 weekend a month with Gabriel's family in Seattle, forming genuine bonds with her half-brothers, while Leo maintained his rightful place as her dad. The divorce was finalized, but Leo and I gradually found our way to a different kind of partnership, one built on honesty and the shared love for our daughter, rather than the foundation of lies I'd constructed. On Lila's 15th birthday, I watched her blow out candles surrounded by both Leo and Gabriel, their wives, her brothers, and a handful of friends who knew the whole complicated truth. I have 2 dads, she announced proudly, when someone asked about the unusual gathering. In that moment, I realized that while my lie had caused immeasurable pain, the truth had ultimately given Lila something precious. Not the perfect family I'd tried to manufacture, but an authentic one expanded by forgiveness, honesty, and love that transcended biology.